And we are back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today we are concluding our DC Dual Force Farewell Tour. So at the time that the game... Man, how do I even get into this? So at the time that the game announced that it was canceling, I had over 100,000 gold. I had 100 packs just sitting in my... Because I already had a complete collection by that point. And I was like, well, I'm going to start working on... They finally gave us atomization is what they called it, but it's like dusting from Hearthstone, where I could junk cards and then make foil cards. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to open packs till I either run out of packs or get bored, because the 100 that I have has exploded since then. I've purchased every item in the store. They released all these bundles after they said the game was going to get canceled. Stuff clearly they had planned, but hadn't released yet. We bought all this stuff. We got all the cosmetics. I mean, I beat this game. I made World's Finest. I played with every leader that the game has. And so we're going to open packs today. I've played through all the comic missions. I've played through all the tutorials. I've done everything there is to do in DC Dual Force, including World's Finest, which I'm pretty proud of. For a game to come out and last as little amount of time as this one did in full release, it's pretty wild that it was hard to get there, I guess I should say. So we're going to open these things and I'm going to talk about the game. So I want to start with the general idea about what the game did right. So DC Dual Force as a game introduced a resource system that I haven't really encountered in other games. Now, I've encountered cards that are costed in such a way so that they're thresholded so that you have to play them later in the game. The way Dual Force did it is you have 3 different cost points of cards. You have bronze cards. I also call them copper cards all the time. Cards like this guy right here. You have silver cards like Miss Martian, and oh man, Commissioner Gordon's great because it's actually 2 cards when you play him. But you have silver and then you have gold. So on turn 1, you have 1 bronze, so you can make 1 play. On turn 2, you have 2 bronze. On turn 3, you have 1 silver and 1 bronze. So you never get up to that third... Well, okay. Like all card games, the correct answer to any question is it depends, because there's cards that do that. But under core game rules, you never get up to that third resource. So on turn 1, you have 1 copper, bronze. On turn 2, you have 2 bronze. On turn 3, you have a silver and a bronze. On turn 4, you have 2 silvers. And on turn 5 and every turn thereafter, you have a gold and a silver. And if you want to play a bronze card, you still can. You can use a gold resource to pay for a bronze card. It's just, that's not generally great. Oh wow, I really like the way that one looks. Death of Superman is one of those stories that's like near and dear to my heart. So I loved this resource system for a bunch of different reasons. To start with, you don't have any resource cards in the deck. Every card in the deck is a live playable card. And the way they gated their cards with factions in this game is leaders like Hal Jordan here is part of the whatever the green faction is. I can't remember now. Magic, Energy, I think it is. So when you have him as one of your leaders, you get 20 cards from that faction, 20 green cards. And if you have Batman, which of course I would, he's part of the Tactic faction, and you get 20 Tactics cards. So your deck is always an even split between your 2 leaders in terms of the number of cards in the deck. Now, the strategy can really lean heavily to one leader or the other. That is not super relevant, but the deck is always split between 2 factions perfectly evenly. If you go both Tyranny, both purple, then you get 40 purple cards. But in my experience, that did not work out very well. Anytime I tried to double down, I felt like I was ending up playing Tactics cards that were worse because I couldn't put like, you have the best 20 Tactics cards and you have the best 20 Might cards, and that's your deck. And if you double down on Tactics, well, now you have the best 40 Tactics cards, and some of those are not as good as the best Anarchy or Might cards. So the purple faction's Tyranny, the orange faction's Anarchy, the red faction is Might, I think the green faction is Energy, and the blue faction, where I spent most of my time, is Tactics. So that's that's kind of like how the card system works. So in addition to the resources being spawned automatically and the decks being forced to be divided between your two factions, it's really strange how the impact on what you like, the card value, like the actual tempo that you get on the board. So there's a might card that costs 1 bronze and it's a 3/4, which feels like it should be like a 3 or a 4 drop. There's cards that feel like 5 drops, but they're silver, so you could actually play them as early as turn 3. So there's this weird, instead of having these clear breakpoints at like 1 drops are this, 2 drops are this, those are probably the worst examples, but generally 3, 4, 5, these higher drops, there's big distinctions between them. The low drops, they're a little bit more squishy. But instead of having these breakpoints at every turn, it's more like you have a breakpoint every couple of turns. So your silver cards don't necessarily feel like 3, well, some silver cards feel like 3 drops, some silver cards feel like 5 drops. And that is just such a cool way to do a game. It's such a unique way to cost the cards. So I've thrown some praise here on the core system, the core mechanics. I suppose it's worth talking about why did this game die as well. Well, the bugs are a huge part of it. So when I was playing this in beta, every time there was an update, and sometimes just for no reason, I would have to completely uninstall the game and go re-download it and reinstall it. I eventually realized just keep the installer on my computer and I can delete it and install it quicker. This happened dozens of times over several months, but probably 50 times over several months in beta. Now, eventually they got that figured out, but the bugs persisted. There was constant bugs. Ladama, which was a excellent card, a card that as long as you've played 2 or 3, depending upon which version, other gold cards this game. Oh, I forgot to flip the leader there. She comes down and she kills all of the opposing characters. That's incredibly strong. They kept bugging her. Like, there's an update, she gets broken, she doesn't work anymore, which is pretty bad if you're trying to play Tyranny and you're playing a control list and you need to have the ability to push off the aggro decks. Really frustrating stuff. I actually tried to make one of my climbs to World's Finest during one of the times when Ladama sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. Ooh, is that yeah, that's a foil Zatara. This card is completely broken. I've seen games where they get the magical spell count up to like 20, and this guy can just one-shot your leaders even if you're at full health. That's madness. I mean, it takes work to get there, but it's madness. There's a card, I think it's called Indoctrinate. It's a Tyranny card that lets you take a bronze or silver character from the opponent, well, a non-gold character from the opponent's field and shuffle it into your deck. Often it would just leave an image of the card there on the board, even though the card wasn't there anymore. And if you later play other cards in that spot, it would show the wrong values on their stats and make attacking difficult. So there were bugs on top of bugs. There were whole stretches where the game was basically unplayable. There was huge balance issues. My Batman got hit hard with the Nerf bat multiple times. So I think part of the problem with that, though, is if you don't have... Man, that art looks incredible. If you don't have good testing, things are going to get through. So they were finding out that the game had these like imbalanced characters or these effects that people were finding unfun, but they weren't finding out quickly enough. And a huge part of the reason for that is because this game was PC only. This was clearly a game that was designed and developed to be played on mobile, without a doubt. From the way the field works, when we eventually get to the part of this video where we have split, you'll be able to see that it looks like, much like Marvel Snap, it was designed to be played in a vertical orientation on a mobile device, for sure. Which is mind-boggling to think about, because this game runs so hot. You can probably hear my computer fan in the background trying to keep up with how resource-intensive this card game is. That's ridiculous. So, I don't know what it was, like, what exactly... I mean, the graphics do look good when you play the cards, especially the legendary cards that have unique animations when they come into play. That stuff all looks really impressive. But it's crazy how system intensive. Destiny, first-person shooter with all those particles flying around, does not run as hot on my computer. Wow, look at that Highfather. Foil even. As DC Dual Force, which just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I think I just saw the number of packs I have, but it's ridiculous. Ooh, I like that art too. We have almost 3,000 packs, so I don't know if I'm going to have the patience to sit here and open 3,000 packs, but we're going to open a bunch of them. Black Manta. That looks great too. This was another really cool mini set. So you have a game that's clearly designed for mobile, and you release it in PC only. Now, the beta, okay, that I kind of understand, but to never ever release this on mobile, I think is probably what killed them. Oh, the Riddler. This is one of my favorite cards in the whole game. You get this guy down on turn 1. He's got the stats of like 2/4 is huge, of 4 but. You get him down on turn 1, turn 2 you play something to protect him, and every single turn your opponent's just feeding you cards, just feeding you value. Now, the problem you can run into is you might not have a place to play all that value, because the board is limited to only 6 slots. This is another thing that I like and dislike. I think limiting the board, it makes sense because I know this was designed to be a mobile game, and it forces you, both limiting the number of resources that you have, and limiting the board spots, it puts you kind of on rails. And I have seen people talk about how that's a drawback to the game. How you get ahead early and it's really hard, if not impossible, to try to recover from that. And there is some truth to that. The comeback, the catch-up mechanics in this game can be pretty tough, although cards like this, once you start hitting those gold turns, can really do it. The biggest problem I've had, and I complained about this a lot during the comics, the comic mission videos I did, is when you don't have enough copper, enough bronze cards in your deck. Because if you don't have these things that you can do early in the game, if you're sitting out turns 1, 2, maybe even turn 3, even if you have a silver card, if you're only playing 1 silver card on turn 3 and your opponent has played out 1 thing on 1, 2 things on 2, 2 things on 3, you're hopelessly far behind. Now, cards like Ladama, cards like Massacre that let you board wipes, you can certainly come back from it if you're packing the right stuff, but if you're trying to play an aggro game against another aggro deck, and you don't have your stuff, and they have their stuff, yeah, that's GG. Like, we're done here. So, I do think there is... Having more catch-up mechanics, I think, kind of makes sense, but also just accepting sometimes that, like, you don't win every game. Like, some games, you get behind early, and it's like, okay, let's go to the next one. And that was really the approach I try to take. I try to not let myself fight for... If I know I'm going to lose, I try to let it go sooner for my own mental health. I wonder if I have enough cards to boil out my deck without even having to like open and atomize all these, because 3,000 packs is going to take a while, but we're going to keep doing it. So some more things that I really like. The road to World's Finest. While I don't use Twitch much anymore, the Twitch drops system and trying to get people excited about pushing for their version of Legend, Masters, whatever you want to call it. World's Finest is what they called it in this game. This is great spot removal card. I think that was positive. I think it was a little bit too late. Like, for me, I'd been playing the game months and had a complete collection by the time the game came out with like a full release. And I'm sure people who got into the game when it released went on the ladder and would get paired against players who had played at some point in the beta, maybe not played the whole beta, but had a more robust collection. Because there is a huge difference between cards that are rare like this, although this is a pretty weak rare, and common cards. The legendaries in particular do wild things, like the Riddler we looked at earlier, a foil ventriloquist. So it can be really, but that's true of like every card game. If you're going to, and they did, if you're going to charge people money for packs during the beta, then you can't reset collections. Like, you just can't do that. So they put themselves in this position where they needed that extra income. Clearly they needed more income than they got because the game's canceled now. But they needed that money, so they knew they couldn't reset collections. So then new players came in. Ooh, another legendary. Yeah, this is another incredibly powerful card. There are common gold cards in the Tyranny faction. They don't hang with Necron. So the Steam people, the Epic Store people, they come into the game after it releases, and they're playing against people who have way more cards than they do, way more experience, and I think that's the more important thing. I am sure I could build a deck with only common cards and do quite well against most people who are playing the game for the first time. I've got a really good understanding of the game. I spent a lot of time with a pretty limited card pool, and as such, I feel pretty confident that I would be in a good position even with a limited collection. But if you both have a limited collection and you're just learning the game, that's like a double whammy of frustration. And then when you add on the layer of the bugs, how resource intensive it is, there's gonna be people whose computers just can't play this game. Like, that's crazy to say about a card game. You can run Hearthstone on a potato. I mean, it may make the potato pretty hot. Like, Marble Snap famously ran really hot when it first came out. This thing runs hot on my computer. That's wild. So there's people who might have been interested in it, couldn't play it because their systems weren't able to handle the absolute insanity of the resource demand. There's people who probably got really frustrated by dropping games to cards that didn't appear when they were supposed to, cards that disappeared, the bug where you just can't finish a game and you eventually have to concede. Like, you log out, walk away for a day, come back, you're still in the same game, so you just eventually have to concede to get out of it. That's pretty irritating. All these things are off-ramps for people. Like, nobody likes to lose games that they should have won. Nobody likes when they think a card is going to act one way and then it just randomly does a different thing because it's bugged out. Nobody likes when their card succeeds, but it's visually represented as not succeeding on the screen. So all these things worked against getting a lot of players into the game because people would bounce off of it for these kinds of reasons, which I have to say I understand. I can't criticize people for having those criticisms of the game. I can't say this is a game that let me play as Batman. This is a card game with a unique resource mechanic that was trying a new thing that let me play as Batman. That is a bullseye for the kind of stuff that I'm going to be interested in. And for the amount of time I got to spend with this game, I had a great time. The comic missions I have completed since the announcement that the game was going to get shut down. I went back and completed all of them. They weren't all winners. There was a couple of stinkers in there, but for the most part, what they were trying to do as far as single player content. Now, I should acknowledge I'm not the kind of player who generally enjoys single player content in like video game stuff. I would much prefer to, like, if it's a card, oh, here's Indoctrinate. This is the card I was talking about that was bugged forever. I don't think they ever fixed it fully. Oh man, this thing being copper is unreal. You play this, this can be a kill shot on a leader at the end of the game, or it can hose your opponent's ability to control the board with their leader abilities early game. This guy was nuts. I got so mad about him many times. I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? People bouncing off. Okay, so you've got people bouncing off the game for totally valid reasons, and therefore you have fewer people playing it, so you have less data to look at, which means at the end you have less reliable balance. And when the game gets released, the art on this card has always been just so weird to me. This thing was really, really, really good. It used to give -2 to enemy recruits, and they changed it. It still kind of does, but they made it so it wouldn't kill as many things outright. So then they had the balance issues, and they didn't have enough people playing the game to get on top of the balance and have the balance right. They rushed it to market, I'm sure because they needed the money, because they weren't getting enough money from people who were willing to spend money during the beta period, which makes sense. You generally don't want to spend money on games during the beta period, because things like this happen. I will say, to their credit, they are offering people refunds. Whether those refunds actually come through, I don't know. So there were so many things working against the success of the game, and ultimately it crumbled underneath all that pressure. I think if they could have gotten a stable client, dealt with the bugs, and even if it was buggy, if you could have got this on phones, if you could have got this on mobile, the number of people I talked to who are like, oh, I'm super excited to play DC Dual Force, but I'm not going to play it on my PC, I need it on my phone. And now those people are never going to play the game. So there's this huge segment of the market that was untapped, and out of the small segment of PC gamers, they because of how resource hungry the game is, a bunch of people, like casual PC gamers, probably can't play it because you actually need a dedicated graphics card and good cooling and like a pretty decent system to run this card game, which again does not make any sense. So there's just so many places where people bounced off the game, and the ultimate end result is the game failed, and it's kind of tragic. It sort of reminds me of Argent Saga in that it was a game that took a lot of mechanics. I guess let me start that sentence over. I tend to think of card games in terms of collections of mechanics rather than like the whole tapestry. There's little bits and pieces here and there that I look at and I'm like, ooh, I really like that. I really like that. Argent Saga was a game that had lots and lots of almost Frankenstein in how many pieces you can see had clearly been taken from other card games. And they all fit together really well. And the reason that game failed does not have that much to do with, this is a great card too, does not have that much to do with the actual game itself. It has to do with all the stuff that goes into supporting and around the game. And I think that's kind of where I'm landing with DC Dual Force as well. The game was solid. The art on these cards looks great. The effects were good. Yes, there were balance issues. Yes, there were stability issues. But like at the end of the day, it was a really solid game that got taken down and brought into an early grave due to issues that weren't the gameplay itself. And that's really disappointing to me. As somebody who loves games, like the whole purpose of this channel, everything I do on here is about the games first, because I love solving these puzzles. Whatever it is in card games, you put me against somebody else and we're both trying to solve the puzzle of reducing the other person's health to 0 and resisting against, oh, this thing wins games. If you can get him down and you don't have the like burst damage from hand to kill this guy and you're relying on like board clearing from your leaders, you're done. You just lose that game. This card is ridiculous. But he only has 2 health, so he's pretty easy to kill with like burst damage from hand with reach. So yeah, another card game, too early to the grave. So let's see, we have opened 100 packs, not even 100 packs. I'm really curious how much Atom Dust we're gonna need in order to fully bling out my Batman Poison Ivy deck, which was the deck that I rode to World's Finest. Pretty much, I had a few different versions of Batman decks. I played with Batman Lex Luthor. I tried to go Batman Green Arrow to double down on tactics. That one didn't super work. I played Batman Superman for a long time before they nerfed the heck out of a lot of the key cards in that. And ultimately, the Batman Poison Ivy deck is where I landed as like my favorite. They let me do enough control-y stuff. Batman as a leader in this, having his utility belt, they really put a lot of love and time and care into trying to make the leaders feel like the flavor and the theme of the comics. Batman being able to pull gadgets out of his utility belt to affect combat as well as get a little bit of an attack, that felt really good. It was a lot of fun. And there were a lot of the Bat family characters that hinged around gadgets. So it gave you this feeling where, like, maybe the stats on my guys aren't ridiculous. Like, this Might Minotaur is a 3/4 that you can play on turn 1. A 3/4 on turn 1. That is as scary as it sounds. So the tactics cards probably aren't going to be scary stat-wise, but they put all these extra choices, all these extra options in your hand and let you ping the board down with your batarangs and your tear gas and such. I like this card that lets you benefit from having only one leader. That's another cool aspect. One of your leaders gets killed, so hey, I'm going to play a thing that gives me the card's dead until your first leader dies. So if somebody kills both of your leaders in one turn, like, you're out of luck. But that's a cool escape hatch to try to bail the game out and change the flow of things at the end. So the idea of having leaders, I think, has increased in popularity in like all the card games over my years of playing. Like even Magic now with the Commander format has kind of embraced the idea of having a tentpole unit that you kind of build your deck around and that you have access to for the whole game. Versus, of course, you've got your leader there getting experience and they get to do a cool thing. So the leaders having the charge up system in this game, where some of them, it does feel very much like Versus, where Black Adam, for example, has to get 10 charges and then he permanently gets an attack buff. That's really, really, really strong. Whereas other leaders, like Batman, you get to do this thing every other turn and he gets a small attack buff and a gadget. Weird that card's in packs. So this is a different take on the idea of having a central figure that you kind of build your deck around than even Versus with like its main character system. You've got the two characters, so you've got this dual focus. You have dual resources every turn. They leaned into the idea of dueling in this 1v1 dueling card game in a bunch of kind of unique and interesting ways that other card games didn't. And again, to me, it's just a shame to see it go. Lead from the front. All right. That was a lot of packs. Oh, and here's some more currency. Yeah, they started giving us currency hand over fist here at the end. So this side panel thing, I wanted to talk about this. This was never instituted in the game where you could actually do something to manipulate that, but it was a thing that was in the game on the PC version that I don't think would have been present on the... Oh wait, I can't do it from the menu, can I? That I don't think would have been present in the mobile version. So this was like a whole thing that they built on the sides of... In fact, let's do this real fast. So they built this thing out for the widescreen on PC for the people that are playing in beta that I don't think even would have been present at all on the mobile version, which we never got. And that's these side panels here. So you've got your characters. I'm not even gonna look at them, I don't care. You've got your characters that start, but then you can scroll through this whole side panel and see all these different comic panels. And this like grid work that's on them when they're grayed out, they added that. That wasn't there originally. They were grayed out, but they didn't have that like film over them. So conceivably, you would have been able to pick which comic art you wanted in your side panel. That would have been cool. So I could have had like, I unlocked enough Batman art that the entire side is Batman the whole time. I remember that storyline. That would have been incredible. But alas, this is one more of those features that we see the promise of from the menu, but we never actually... There's just a blank there. We never actually got to see implemented what they had in mind for us. That dark side looks cool. Oh, that's one of my favorites. So there's like all this cool art, and I mean, you could have played this game on PC with this feature and never happened to scroll over to the side to even look at this. I mean, I don't know how many games I played before I realized, pretty quickly I realized I could scroll over it or mouse over it to highlight it, but it was a while before I realized you could actually scroll over it and go up and down with your mouse wheel and look at, 100 pieces of art on each side. So even some of the cool features that they had they didn't really advertise that much. All right, so we want to look at cards. Oh, first of all, let's go to atomization. Wow, I'll get another 12,000 if I atomize all my duplicates. I don't need you. Okay, so we're gonna attempt to foil every tactics card. We got 42,000. Let's just go for it, right? And then we'll go open more packs if we don't have enough. And, I mean, the foil effects on these cards do look cool. What? There's a card I don't have? Oh, I have to make it? That's the only way to get it? Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. So that means maybe I don't have a complete collection. Are there other cards I don't have? So... unowned. So apparently this is the only other one. As you can see over here, I spent a lot of my time playing tactics and tyranny cards. Wait, where'd he come from? So there just aren't any energy cards that I can get access to by crafting them, or maybe I already did and forgot. Okay, so let's go back to our tactics. This card, holy smokes. This thing was originally a 3/5 when it came out, and so many times on like turn 3, turn 4, I played him and he'd be like a 7/5. Like, it's just ridiculous. This card wins games. Catwoman, she gets in there, she's hidden, so they can't attack her the turn you play her, and then she has that turn to wait, and then when they can attack, like so you basically are guaranteed to get an attack off with her, and when you do, you steal one of their gold cards. And there's some decks where they only run a couple of gold cards, and you steal them and all of a sudden their win condition's gone. This is another one that you attack him, both your leaders. It basically jumps both your leaders ahead a turn because of the charge. A must-kill card. I believe he was a 5/5 at one time. So there's a lot of my favorite cards that got nerfed for good reason. This guy's nuts. Play this dude and just draw all the cards. All of them. This thing won me so many games. Again, you benefit from playing tactics, and this is one of the cards you're only allowed to run one of. And I don't see functionally what the difference. Like, these are both like legendaries, gold value, but I don't know how you know this one's a one of, but it is. You're only allowed to run one of it. Wait, is that guy still? Yeah, he's foiled. Never really liked Mass Arrest. I had it played against me a few times, but it never seemed to do that much. I mean, it seems like it should be good in this game because you're bottlenecked and only being able to play 2 things per turn, so it's hard to get back down to the board. But I generally played the kinds of decks where that just wasn't a problem for me most of the time. Alright, so we're going to foil all our Tyranny cards next. It's kind of fun going through getting the fanciest possible collection one day before they shut down the servers and I never get to look at it again. I loved Ivy's Flytrap, both these cards. The drawback with Hugo is he's a 1-drop that you can't play on turn 1, but if you play him any turn after that, there's always a leader who you want to put off their charge cycle by 1. So good. If you can bounce him back to hand using the grappling hook or the grappling gun gadget, which Batman often would get, play him multiple times, basically rob people of their ability to do the big fancy thing that their leader's supposed to do. I love drawing cards, so of course, when I started playing Poison Ivy, I started running Poison Ivy's Flytrap to draw more cards. This is a removal that feels like it should have been good, but I ended up not running it a lot of the time because it seemed like I would have it and I wouldn't have the unit, or I wouldn't have it when I had a trash unit. It just never really lined up for me. This guy is excellent, and this is fantastic. I love this. Gets around shields, really good stuff. This is actually really fun, turning all these cards to foil. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to need to open those 3,000 packs. So I guess I can add one more stipulation when I say I beat the game. I collected every card. I beat every possible mode, every piece of content that came out for the game. I made World's Finest against other resisting opponents. And I'm going to have a foil collection before this thing is over. This is another one of those. Oh man, not only do you kill their unit, you kill the space, so now they can only recruit 5 characters for the rest of the game. And 2 of those are their leaders, so actually they only have 3 places to recruit. And if you destroy something that's in the space in front of one of the leaders, well, now they can't defend it anymore. So good. This is Ladama. I've talked about her. It used to only be 2 cards. Sometimes she doesn't even work, but man, when she works, this is a board wipe plus a body with a meaningful amount of damage that it can put out. This is another great one. Massacre. It's a fantastic card. Just another board wipe, full board wipe. Against the right deck, this guy can get huge so fast. Decks that have lots of actions in them, you play him and he's a 9/9 before you even blink, and then they keep drawing cards. Expensive, but excellent. Targeted removal. I definitely got killed by Poison Ivy. I never put her in my deck. The idea that she had to live a turn and then could attack a leader for 1 and would win you the game is cool, but 7 just wasn't a big enough defense to make it feel like she would live for me, so I was always gun-shy from playing her. Alright, let's look at... Man, this originally gave 2 attack to your heroes as well, and then they would have that +2 attack for the rest of the game, so Truth and Justice was my finisher in my Batman Superman deck before they changed it. Pulled that one in a pack, huh? Wow, now we're getting to where a bunch of these cards are already foil. Hey, that's what I should have done. Opened all the packs, and I would have opened the foils that way, and I wouldn't have to spend any of my 37,000 atoms. I feel like this was one of the later cards. There was one Superman card that I had a really hard time getting. Lobo was pretty funny too. He has to frag the Bastich. The problem with this is sometimes the bounty would go on to like the leader, so like his thing wouldn't even work until like you'd win the game, and the game would be over before he would get his thing, which is kind of lame. But when you got to do Lobo's thing and you drew 2 cards and they cost 0, yeah, that was a big deal. This guy was huge, especially with Wonder Woman. You put him down in front of Wonder Woman on turn 1. charge her up. She makes him into a 3/3 and attacks and kills whatever your opponent played on turn 1. Then you bounce him back to your hand using the grappling gun from Batman. This Clark Kent, this was one of the last cards I got, like, out of packs. They have 10 copies of Flex Mentalo. That seems very excessive. Alright, so that's all the might cards. Let's go through energy. That's what it was called, energy. I don't remember if I came up with that before. So one thing I guess the game also kind of struggled with was matchmaking, but I mean, that's just a function of all the other stuff I already talked about, like people bouncing off, the overall low player population due to the bugs, the resource intensiveness, the not being on mobile. It's just a real shame. I mean, you look at all this art on all these cards, these cool animations, some of these really obscure characters getting to see their way to like a fully fleshed out animated game of this quality, and it's going away. It's a bummer. I actually have never been able to summon Etrigan. Every time I've tried, I just haven't been able to get the spells to line up. If you've played no spell from hand, return once more to form of man. Oh, that's cool. I didn't notice that it rhymes, but it should. And that's the kind of one of the things that makes Versus so fun to me, is that they inject the flavor into everything they do. And I feel like DC Dual Force was trying to do that with things like the rhyming language on the Etrigan card, and Lobo, when he KOs a unit, he frags that Bastich, you know, stuff like that. This card. You get this out with that card that deals damage to your opponent every time you draw a card, and you just kill him without even having to actually engage with combat. That's good stuff. Okay, I think that's everything. I now have every card ever released for DC Dual Force, and they are all foil. We're gonna go back through here and see if I missed anything. See if there's any last little notables that I'm gonna call out, and then I think that's probably it. Oh. Wait, she had blue around her. What was that other one that had blue around it? Yeah, I think the time to uninstall this game has arrived, unfortunately. I definitely missed a few, so I'm glad I'm going back through one more time. I want to be able to honestly say that I have a complete foil collection of DC Dual Force. Oh, we're missing an Aqualad. Oh, it costs one of my tactics points? No. No. Yep, can't have two of him, so it won't let me craft another. I guess I should look and see if there's any other cards that I only have one of, and make sure that they're the one-of-a-kind cards, and that I'm not short anybody. That would be unacceptable. Oh, for a second I thought I didn't have booster gold. That'd be a crime. This guy never lives. He never lives. You're not gonna give your opponent... Yeah, so he's a one-of-a-kinder. I kind of expected that. What about Speed Force? Is that a one-of-a-kinder? Yep. Oh, Alfred. I think this guy was a 2/2 originally. Such a good card. Draw a card, creates gadgets for you. Specifically bandages, which are probably the least impactful gadgets, but still good. Extra card draw here with her, especially when you think about the other Blue Beetle card that came out in that set, Paco, who he counts, this guy, he counts as a gold, but he only costs a bronze to play. Really good stuff. Sure, yeah, one of a kind. I would have been playing 2 Catwomans if the game would have let me a long time ago. I'm sure this guy. So he's another one that's just awesome if you can line it up. So if you can play him plus Paco on turn 3, he turns into a 7/7 with Evade. So the first time he gets attacked, he doesn't take any damage. And Hunter, so he can attack even in protected characters. So you get that on 3, and then on 4, you play another Paco, so you can ready him and attack for 14, and then 5 on, you can play gold cards and attack for 14 every turn for the rest of the game, if he lives that long. Which people are probably not going to let him live that long, but sometimes you gotta live the dream until they're dead. Did I miss this? Oh, he needs Alexa. Oh, we missed Clayface too. Wow, we missed a whole bunch of the Anarchy faction. We must not have hit these guys. So Batman was definitely my favorite leader. Lex Luthor's thing where he could choose to destroy a friendly unit and recharge himself back up and draw some cards, or he could choose to destroy an enemy unit. That was a really cool control tool. So I liked playing with him a great deal. I loved playing with Batgirl and her ability to do deploys again. I had a Batgirl deck that abused Darkseid, so I could essentially destroy the opponent's entire board and make it so they couldn't play any units anywhere. That was a lot of fun for me. Probably not so much fun for the opponent. Giganta. I always think of her as a 4-mana 7/7, even though she's not technically 4 mana. But I have a soft spot in my heart for 4-mana 7/7s. Alright, let's foil you up, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Solomon Grundy is one of those cool cards that's like perfect to do in a video game card game, but would be really hard to do. I guess it wouldn't be really hard to do, but I like the way he dies, goes away, and then just pops back onto the board. I suppose you could do that in a paper card game, you just do it. This card sucks. Giving your leader Chaotic is terrible. This card is crazy. This card wins games. Like, anytime I was playing Anarchy, it's like, well, I guess I gotta hope I get enough bandages on my utility belt in order to stay above 8, otherwise I'm just gonna die. The Doomsday that just keeps coming. You can play him over and over again, and he never stops. Every time he dies, he just goes back to your hand and you play him again. It's great stuff. Okay. Now I feel more confident that I got them all. I don't know how we missed the Anarchy faction on the first pass, but it probably is the faction I played the least of, though. Oh, wow, he gets little animated question marks next to him when he's foil? Oh, wow, that card's incredible. Missed you. I'm gonna miss you. Man, when this guy, when you play him, his Omega Beams would come out and go all around, and then hit the target and destroy it and eliminate the spot where they stood. So cool. Okay, well that is officially it. DC Dual Force. Fully beaten. Every comic. Every card foil. World's finest. If I end up opening the rest of the packs, I will record when I hit the atomize button, see how big I can get that number to be. But otherwise, we're done with this game. Farewell to DC Dual Force. This is the Build Phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and you go win some games.